Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this 129th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests on this episode include drummer and author Mike Edison. We'll talk about his book, Sympathy for the Drummer, Why Charlie Watts Matters. We'll also visit with former Governor Mark Sanford about his new book, Two Roads Diverged. We'll also visit with legendary Paul Anka. We'll talk about his recent 80th birthday and his new album that's available now, Making Memories. Our final guest will be writer, director, producer Joel Soisson. He's got a new film, My Best Worst Adventure, which will be available digitally on September 1st. Of course, if you would, please take the time to subscribe, comment, leave some feedback, check out the shop, and share with your friends. Now, are you a cool mom? Or maybe better question, do you care if you're a cool mom? A new poll found 47% of moms worry about whether their kids think they're cool. The survey also asked kids to name the things a cool mom should never do. And here are 3 things that can instantly make you an uncool mom. Using their nickname in front of their friends, like calling them sweetheart or Jamie instead of James. Shouting their name in a sporting event or any other event they're taking part in. And finally, 40% of kids say a cool mom would never dance in public. We lost one of the greats, one of the rock and roll legends. Charlie Watts passed away this week, and we've got Mike Edison on the line, going to talk about the book, Sympathy for the Drummer, Why Charlie Watts Matters, and also a little bit more. And first off, Mike, I appreciate you taking some time to be on the show.
It was a great loss this week, and I wrote this book as a real shot of love. So it's kind of, for me, it's bittersweet. It's very sad, but there's a lot of love involved. I'll celebrate.
The book, Sympathy for the Drummer, how long was the process of the book? And now, as you look back, I mean, how proud are you of the fact of putting it out ahead of time, if you will?
Well, there's no way to anticipate that. This wasn't the way it was supposed to go down. I'll tell you what, people always ask how long it took to write this book, and I always tell them 45 years. You know, that's how long, when I started playing the drums, when I started realizing that Charlie Watts was something that was going to be very difficult to decipher and something I really had to try to crack code. And that's the beauty of Charlie Watts. It's deceptively simple, but there's a lot of nuance, a lot of style, a lot of swing. He plays a lot of jazz and syncopations in places where there aren't normally such things. So I've been thinking about this book my whole life. And in the meanwhile, I wrote 10 other books. But the drummer was, but this was always there. You know, it was always there. And I'm very proud that I wrote a book about Charlie Watts, because I don't think anyone else was going to do it. And in fact, maybe the proudest moment is when Charlie Watts himself called me on the phone to tell me they thought it was a lovely book. And I heard that generally the Rolling Stones really dug it, and they invited me to come out and see them at Soundcheck. I'm sad that that's not going to happen.
Now, for you, what do you think the biggest misconception about Charlie was? I mean, I always thought he looked out of place. I mean, that's just, for me, that's what I've noticed as far as fitting in with the Rolling Stones. But for you, what do you think is the biggest misconception about him? I know he's got a diverse drumming background as well.
Well, out of place because he wasn't the guy who, spent his paycheck on eyeliner. Because because he dressed a little bit more like a jazz musician, or right. Someone out for a night in the town, and then the typical Mick Jagger's big gender bending glamour puss, has been over the years. In fact, he looks like a pirate half the time. Charlie is a little bit out of place because he was the actual rock star. He didn't want to be in a rock and roll band when he joined the Rolling Stones. He was slumming it to join their blues band, and of course it took off. But he says they started getting good gigs when they got Charlie. They really, really wanted them because they knew he was the guy who knew how to swing the band like other people couldn't possibly do it.
What was it about Charlie that kept the drive alive? And like you said, he was slumming it to be a part of the Rolling Stones. How long did it take for him to really feel comfortable in his own skin as the drummer for the Stones, if you will?
Well, that's the great thing too about Charlie Watts is he didn't, the stork didn't drop him off completely formed on the doorstep of the Rolling Stones. I think if you listen to The Who and you hear Keith Moon explode on the first record, if you're the first thing John Bonham plays with Led Zeppelin, these guys, I mean, that's what they did. That's what they did the whole time. They were, in those groups, and it's fantastic. But Charlie, he started out swinging these old blues songs, and then a little bit later they get Satisfaction, and you hear him really start to stomp it. It's practically punk rock. It's really aggressive. And then the next thing you know, they're getting a Jumping Jack Flash and Street Fighting Man, and he's a completely different drummer. He's holding it back. He's showing a little bit more style and influence. And by the time they get to Some Girls, he's just a completely different guy. He's really moving in and out of the songs, even on the really hard rocking songs. He's doing things that are just impossible to anticipate. He's an autodidact. It's impossible to copy. As a drummer, I'd sit and listen to it, and you couldn't learn it because there weren't parts to learn. You had to try to anticipate it or breathe into it. Look, if you go on YouTube and you type in how to play like Charlie Watts, you find almost nothing because it's too deceptively simple. It's so nuanced that it's impossible to do. Whereas if you type in how to play Rush or Yes, these things that are supposed to be very difficult, you will find 10,000 perfectly in their bedrooms because you could learn it. You could learn those parts. But Charlie Watts, you can't learn it. You just got to live with it and breathe with it, and there's jazz in it. Even when he's playing in the most hard rock songs of all time, like Jumping Jack Flash and Street Fighting Man and Gimme Shelter. It really has a lot of nuance to it.
Now, Mike, for you as also a drummer yourself, what kind of an impact did Charlie have on you and your stylings?
Well, Charlie Watts is everything. He's a great country drummer, great blues drummer, which is really hard to do. It's so much harder than people think it is to play a good shuffle beat. That's why so many blues bands playing at bars kind of suck, because the idea is that this music is simple. Sort of got into the collective mindset that anybody can play blues in a bar, but it's really difficult. It's like making pizza. I always say there's so few ingredients, and yet there is so much bad pizza. It's very. You really have to put your heart into it, and Charlie understood that, and he sat down and had the discipline, to really do it. So for me, I've learned so much. I listen to it all the time, and even after writing this book, I'm sitting down at the drums with the headphones on and wondering, oh my, I can't believe the things he's doing on Monkey Man and Midnight Rambler. It's nearly impossible to play as a third party looking on from a distance. He really drove the band.
That's right.
So we're going to see it. They're going on tour with the guy sitting in for him, and they got the right guy, candidate to sit in for Charlie Watts, but it is Charlie Watts, and so exactly like him. Do you try to play like him? Do you try to? Everyone knows Charlie Watts. So I guess the fans will decide whether it's an authentic Stones experience. And that's not even necessarily saying that it is the Rolling Stones. I think everyone's going to have a good time. It's going to be emotionally charged. But what do you do now? They always said no Charlie, no Rolling Stones. So I don't know. I'm Mick Jagger. I'm starting to think about my retirement plan.
There you go. Well, again, the book, Sympathy for the Drummer, Why Charlie Watts Matters. Mike, I want to make sure and let our listeners know if they'd like to find more info about the book and your other writings and social media as well, sir.
Yeah, please find me on MikeEdison.com. There's lots of stuff there. You can get the book. There's some excerpts. There's some playlists that I put together so you can listen to all the music that's in the book, from the very beginnings of the Rolling Stones playing blues to some of my very favorite live tracks, some of Charlie Watts' favorite jazz tracks even. MikeEdison.com. The book, of course, is Sympathy for the Drummer, Why Charlie Watts Matters. And there's a whole lot of stuff up there, videos, music. Just fun. I'm sorry that I wrote this book and then this happened. It's kind of like just came out of nowhere. Everyone said, "Oh, he's going to be okay. We're going to see him next year." It's not to be, unfortunately. It's sad. It's a real loss. It's a real blow, because you guys like the Rolling Stones, they really are the last connection to the beginnings of rock and roll. I mean, they played with Chuck Berry and James Brown and Little Richard and Bo Diddley. They knew Marvin Gaye. There's no one else to replace them. So it's sad. We lost a giant. He was the last of a race of dinosaurs.
That's right. Well, again, Mike Edison, it has been great to visit with you, sir. Looking forward to spending some more time with the book myself, and hope you have a great rest of your week, sir.
All right. Thanks very much.
We do want to say thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Smiley's Breezy Vapes at 313 Falcon Road. They've got Wacky Wednesdays coming up every week. They do a special drawing on Wednesdays and Fridays. You can give them a call or send a text at 580-471-VAPE. That's 580-471-8273. Smiley's Breezy Vapes, 313 Falcon Road, here in Altus. Well, changing the most popular thing on your menu is risky. But one of the biggest fast food chains is doing exactly that. Wendy's is changing its French fries, and they claim it's an upgrade. But obviously fans are nervous. They're adjusting the way that they're cut, and they're leaving some of the potato skin on, but that's already how they do their fries. The biggest change is they're coating them in a light batter that's supposed to make them crispier. Now they're doing it because more of us are ordering delivery now, so our food sits in the bag for an average of 15 more minutes. And old soggy fries have become an issue. The new fries are supposed to stay fresh and crispy for a lot longer. And Wendy's says they will taste different, but it's a good different. They'll shift over to the new fries in mid-September. In other fast food news, Taco Bell's version of a fried chicken sandwich arrives next week. They announced it in January, and they've been testing it in Nashville and Charlotte, but it'll be available nationwide next Thursday. It's all-wheat chicken marinated in jalapeno buttermilk and served in a piece of flatbread instead of a bun. So it's like a hot chicken sandwich in taco form. Former Governor Mark Sanford got a new book to talk about, Two Roads Diverged. And first off, Governor Sanford, such a privilege to visit with you.
Other way around. Thank you for letting me join you.
Now tell us, the book Two Roads Diverged, how long of a process was it coming up with the concept, or was it maybe somebody pushing you to get this written, if you will?
Well, I wouldn't say pushing, but I would say encouraging. A friend came to me and said, look, you really ought to write this. You're wrapping up a long spell in politics, and, I think you have a few thoughts to offer, both on where we are and where we might be going as a country. And so I wrote it relatively quickly. It was sort of a one last chance to say, hey, I believe true north to be over here, and I believe we're at something of an inflection point as a country, and off we went to the races.
And Governor, I know the byline of the book, A Second Chance for the Republican Party, the conservative movement, the nation, and ourselves. And how important is it that we really take into consideration what we're doing as we move forward because of the ripple effect of how that trickles down to generations that follow as well?
I think real important. I think that we're at a bigger inflection point really than we've ever seen before in our country. From a financial standpoint, in terms of debt, deficit, government spending, we're more vulnerable, I would argue, than we've ever been in the history of our country. And, bad things happen to a federal budget, and bad things happen to an economy. So I think you have that, leg of the stool that's wobbly. And the other is we have a level of sort of tribalism that I think is dangerous. The left is striding about what it believes, and the right is striding about what it believes, and we're losing our center. The core of what has held our country together has been that vital center, the working middle class, and if you don't watch out, centrifugal force has a way of spinning things out of control. And I think you combine those two things, and we really are at a fork in the road, and I think we need to be contemplative about the steps we take going forward.
And Governor, for you, I mean, you mentioned this as well. Emotions, I think, are playing a bigger role in decisions than maybe we've seen before. And how do we get away from emotional bureaucracy, if you will?
By all of us taking a deep breath. We're living in a cancel culture age where everybody's so easily offended. I'm offended by this, I'm offended by that. Let's quit being offended. Let's have a little bit more empathy toward one another. Let's have just a little bit more humility and less hubris in our approach toward others. And just back away a little bit from the edge. I mean, if we all did that collectively, we'd be a whole lot better off. As it is, people are awfully strident. You look at social media these days, and our founding fathers gave us a reason-based republic, but for it to work, you actually have to have reason. You just can't have emotion driving the train, and we have a lot of emotion indeed driving the train these days.
And Governor, what do you think it's going to take for the conservative movement, the Republican Party, to come back around to more of an open door to others as well? What is it going to take to get to that as well?
I think you look at the base of the people I knew in the conservative movement, they're good people. But, with due respect to President Trump, and I know he's a lightning rod, some people love him, some people hate him, I don't think he did us any favors in the way he was as strident as he was. I remember being in a town hall meeting, and this guy was just wearing me out. I mean, obnoxious. And so afterward, I went to him and I said, look, I don't know you, but I know you by reputation, and whatever this was that was going on didn't sound like the you that I've heard about. And he responds to me, he says, look, if the President of the United States can say anything to anybody on any subject at any time, why can't I? And I think he gave people license, if you will, to be a bit more strident, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think we need to be listening to each other just a touch more. I think our politics might be a little bit less combative.
And Governor, I know that you wrote into the memoir as well some tough times as well, and it also gives hope as we all go through stuff in our lives, but being able to make the turnaround, the changes, and given another chance as well. And Governor, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I address it up front. I blew myself up in 2009. Now, the people who knew me best along the coast of South Carolina ended up 2 years later, after I left the governorship, electing me back to the U.S. Congress, and I went back up to Congress for another 3 terms. But that was a journey, a real journey, and what it taught me a lot was about empathy and humility. I used to read the paper and think, idiot, moron, what were they thinking? And now it's, but by the grace of God go I. And the reality of our lives is that at some point or another, whether publicly or privately, we mess up, and we wish we could push rewind play, but that's not life. And we all go through life a little bit wounded, but hopefully in that process, a little bit more empathetic toward others, a little bit more humble in our approach. And so I thought it was important to write about that, just to say, I'm not some perfect politician. Everybody in politics tries to pretend they're perfect. I am fully human, and I've got the scrapes and bruises to show it, but I hope that gives me a little bit more authority and authenticity in saying, based on my journey of a second chance, I think that the Republican Party and conservative movement absolutely has a second chance before it if we will take it. And, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat really doesn't matter, but what we need is a robust debate of ideas in this party. I mean, one perspective only will lead you to the Bay of Pigs. That was a famous incident at the time of the Kennedy administration where you had a bunch of bright minds in the room, but they came up with a faulty decision because there wasn't any comparing and contrasting of ideas. So I think that ideas from the left are made a little bit better if you have the right tugging at them, and ideas from the right are made a little bit better if you have the left tugging at them. And it goes back to the, again, core of what's made this country great is the ability to work through ideas and come up with a solution that had a little bit of both perspectives in it.
That is right. And again, the memoir, Two Roads Diverged, a second chance for the Republican Party, the conservative movement, the nation, and ourselves. Governor Mark Sanford, I always want to make sure and let our listeners know where they can find more info, not only about the book, but everything you've got going social media-wise as well, sir.
They can find me at marksanford.com, just on the internet. They can find the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or all those different sort of online places that you can buy those kinds of things. And there's 25 years worth of hard knocks of experience and perspective in it.
That's right. Well, Governor, again, it has been a privilege to have the chance to visit with you, sir. I appreciate you taking some time and looking forward to spending some more time with the book myself.
Yes, sir. Take good care.
We do want to say thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Smiley's Breezy Vapes at 313 Falcon Road. They've got Wacky Wednesdays coming up every week. They do a special drawing on Wednesdays and Fridays. You can give them a call or send a text at 580-471-VAPE. That's 580-471-8273. Smiley's Breezy Vapes, 313 Falcon Road, here in Altus. Well, there's a new survey that found the average woman feels the most confident with her looks at age 32. That doesn't mean confidence plummets after 32, though. It actually goes up for most women. Almost 2/3 say the older that they get, the more confident they are in general. And here are the top 5 reasons. Number 1, you care less about what other people think. 63% agreed with that one. Number 2, you feel more settled down in life. Number 3, it gets easier to embrace changes in your looks. Number 4, more support from friends and family. And number 5, you feel more confident at work and know you're good at your job. We've got the legendary Paul Anka on the line. Got a new album excited to talk about called Making Memories. And first off, Paul, always great to visit with you, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be able to talk to you again.
Now tell us, Making Memories, celebrating your 80th birthday. That's first off, congratulations for that. But I tell you, you got a lot of folks to help you celebrate that birthday as well.
Yeah, they all showed up and surprised me. I saw what you saw. I was probably the last one to see it, and it was memorable. I'm not a big birthday guy, frankly. I kind of live my life away from the numbers and just work instinctively to what I'm doing. But it was a big turn, and to have this album that I've been working on. We all got locked up in COVID, obviously, but I was fortunate enough that being locked away and quarantined, I just started writing, and it never stopped. So I got to the point where, okay, 80th birthday, what am I going to give someone else back, my fans? And by the end of it, we'd finished it, and we had a quite special moments with it. My Way with its anniversary with Bublé and Buccelli was a kick. Olivia Newton-John, that TikTok kind of brought shoulder back. So I was really kind of proud of it all, that it came together. And to still be making music, which is my passion. I've been doing it since I was 14 years old. I was very kind of humbled by that because, you sit there as a writer sometime and wonder if you're going to be able to write something that you appreciate and are proud of, not just something. And that's where I landed with this. So it all came together very nicely.
And Paul, how surprising is it sometimes how your music has touched others? And I know social media has allowed music to go places we never even imagined. I mean, who would have seen what TikTok did for you this last year, right?
Boy, that's a great point. Those of us that started, back when, we never envisioned anything like this. Now to be living it and realizing the impact is quite, amazing to me. I'm not one of those that judges how the times change and its content and, I wish we could go back to the old days. I just don't live like that. So as I see all of this and marvel at its possibility, especially Shoulder, I had no idea. I mean, my kid's coming up to me now and all that stuff. And it's just, it's amusing, it's gratifying, and you look at it and the big point for me was that in Making Memories, everybody was confined, obviously, and I had to, with the technology, which is part of the TikTok thing in terms of what it brings forth to us, I was talking to guys in their home, and they were putting guitar parts on when I needed a string section in Budapest. And we're sitting here in California, and I got a symphony orchestra in Budapest putting all the strings on. So the whole technology age has allowed us to really thrive like that, and that was the big kick. But I'm really enjoying the TikTok thing because they're getting so innovative with it. It's gratifying. Your songs like your children, and Shoulder was probably my favorite song from the 50s.
And I know that going along with this, you've also announced a 22-city North American concert tour. And Paul, how different is your mentality going in after having so much time away?
Another great question. 1st. I'm still crossing my fingers that it's going to start in October. You know, the tour starts on the 22nd in New York. We don't end until June of next year, and the anticipation of it is, you know, kind of concerning. We got to remember a lot of words all over again. We got to remember a lot of music all over again. We got to kind of get our feet wet again. We'll do it. It's going to be fine. But it's a new one for me. I've never been out of work like this close to 2 years. It's a little frightening. I just hope it happens.
Now, Paul, you mentioned how you never had this kind of time off, and with us having so much time to ourselves, one of the questions I love is did it maybe reinvigorate that fire in your heart to get out there and perform, or to write maybe more?
Well, certainly to write. I mean, when the reality of it wasn't going to be short term, and everybody played by the rules, and I was just locked away here. It was just amazing how I said, wow, I've never had this kind of time. And it all came to play, and I sat down and just started writing like I've never written before, because it was always very eclectic and other things to do. So that really made the big difference. And, of course, the most important was, we're all close to our families. We all love our families, but we all have things to do, but to have that much time to be with your family and then sit down and have your passion to write, we all adjusted in different ways. Right now I pray that we're just going to get back to some kind of normal, because we've got this great foundation now that has kind of put us in a different pivot position.
That is right. Now, Paul, if folks want to find more information about Making Memories and, of course, the tour dates as those become available, TikTok and all that, where's the best place to keep up with all that, my friend?
Well, I guess you Googled it all up. We've got a site, and if you start out Googling, I'm not a big computer guy. I'm so tired of looking at notes, playing pianos that, I got a staff of people that put it all up online, and pretty easy to get to, and that will spill everything out, I think. Yeah.
There you go. Well, Paul,
I think there's some great casinos. My apologies, in Oklahoma, and there's a couple there. I forget the name, but we're going to be hitting them next year.
All right. Well, Paul, we look forward to seeing you when you come back around, and it's always a privilege to visit with you, sir. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch up again real soon, sir.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me again.
We do want to say thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Smiley's Breezy Vapes at 313 Falcon Road. They've got Wacky Wednesdays coming up every week. They do a special drawing on Wednesdays and Fridays. You can give them a call or send a text at 580-471-VAPE. That's 580-471-8273. Smiley's Breezy Vapes, 313 Falcon Road, here in Altus. For most of 2020, the best option for socializing was sitting in a badly lit room on Zoom, trying to parse a group conversation to determine who was saying what without, again, saying, "What was that?" Well, this Labor Day, it's safer for vaccinated Americans to socialize in person. And according to a new survey, many people are looking to have a cookout. 72% of people say they have created lasting memories around a grill. 51% say outdoor barbecues are an ideal venue for socializing. And 47% said a grill is like an at-home version of the office water cooler. The grill was more popular than hanging out at a restaurant, sitting around at a dining room table, being at a park, or even socializing on vacation. Our final guest on the episode, and like I mentioned to him before we came on, as I started reading through his bio, his byline, kept getting more nervous and more nervous as I look at the works he's been involved in. Joel Soisson on with us today. Did I get close?
Perfectly said.
How about that? Joel, first off, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Very excited.
Now, we've talked about several movies that you've worked on before. We may get to those in a bit, but got a new movie available on digital on the 1st called My Best Worst Adventure. Tell our listeners a little bit where this came from for you.
Well, I have as you probably noticed, Cameron, done quite a few horror films and action films and teen comedies and basically what we call genre films. And they've been good to me, and I've tried to be good to them, but it doesn't really scratch the itch of a filmmaker to do a sort of a real story about real people and real circumstances. And what I found when I was shooting in Thailand, a little horror thriller in Bangkok, that the producer there had this wonderful story about growing up in Thailand, in the north of the country near Cambodia, a tiny little town where they had this bizarre sport where they would race water buffaloes. And those suckers are fast. They're fast as horses on the sprint. And what these kids do is they climb on top of them and they race each other, dozens at a time. And it's like you're sitting atop a stampede and hanging on for dear life. No bridles or nothing, nothing to grip, no saddles. It's bareback and it's just balls out. And if you fall off, it's you're going to get mashed. So I just thought as a milieu for a story, but also as a sports story, a sports movie, and just a different take on sort of the Seabiscuit, National Velvet, all those old horse racing stories that we grew up with and loved. And yet it also appealed to my horror side, because what you're really talking about is this girl from LA, a 13-year-old girl who has trouble with her father and gets shipped off to her quirky grandmother in northern Thailand. And it is like being dropped on an alien planet. Yeah. You are just in the middle of all of these strangers. You don't understand them. They're weird. They're dangerous. And you're really in a struggle for survival.
Now, for you, you talked about getting the concept and the idea while you were in Thailand. Is it from the travels that you've had over the years that have maybe inspired some of the writings?
Quite a lot. I mean, inspired both the ideas and the writing side, but also the how to get things done side. We have this notion in America that we got it all figured out. We have the technology, we have the toys, we have the smarts, but a lot of these countries that don't have the resources that we do have the skills to make up for it. It's like, when dogs became domesticated, they got a lot dumber than the wolves because they just got, everything was delivered to them on a plate, And I feel like that as an American sometimes. I've gotten sort of sloppy. And I'm always thinking when I'm overseas, especially in what we kind of charmingly call the third world countries, and it's been a real eye opener. And that's part of why I wanted to do this movie, is to sort of narrow the cultural divide of like us and them and the haves and the have-nots and all those things that just seem to be dividing us up like, hugely.
Right.
So, so I'm always inspired. And you just, as most of us know, you walk into a bar and you sit down and you talk to a stranger, he's going to inform your life in a way that will make you different from the way you walked in. That's and good. You might not be sober either, but that's a different part of it.
That's a whole nother tangent of it.
Yes.
Now, Joel, this last year, what are maybe some of the things that you have learned about yourself having to spend more time alone and separate from other people? What are maybe some of the new inspirations or something?
I learned that I am a comfortable introvert, for one thing, because the isolation was nurturing to me. I just, part of, I guess, the reason being that my work life is such a social, life that you're constantly bouncing off other people, and that's great. And I do enjoy their company, but to learn about quiet. We live in a very noisy culture, don't you think? I mean, it's just like the media and the people and the things happening around us and the constant assaults on our senses. And I got quiet in 2020. I mean, that was just a remarkable thing. Grieving over the suffering and trying to reach out at times to sort of help us in any way that I could, but also reveling in that solitude, like being on a desert island and knowing sooner or later you're going to get rescued, right?
Now, the story in My Best Worst Adventure, the character, I noticed, I watched the trailer a moment ago, a lot of silence in this. And in the writing process, is the silent parts, the descriptive parts, are those harder to write than the actual dialogue parts?
That's a wonderful question. Yes. But it's also, it's a good challenge because, I'm not quite old enough to remember the silent film days, but I love them. And I love them because that's what film is. It's a visual medium. I mean, talkies kind of came in and messed things up a little bit, but I love the idea of people expressing themselves through their actions and they're quiet. And so I deliberately made the two lead children in this movie, mute. Neither of them ever speaks for different reasons, but obviously there's story reasons involved, but also from just a filmmaking reason, it fascinated me to have these two kids, one from Thailand and one from America, bonding and communicating in ways that sort of bridge that cultural and language gap, and doing it beautifully and effectively. And I watched those two kids grow toward each other through the process of the movie in that same way. It was just a wonderful evolution to watch how people, when they don't have a common language, how they truly effectively can communicate.
That's true. That's true. And for you, does traveling around the world and seeing the way that others interact, not only with themselves, but like you, I'm sure you can't speak every language everywhere you go, but the communication there as well, does it give you hope that we really are closer as people than they want to make us out to be?
I just would urge anybody who is suspicious of anyone anywhere to travel there and meet them. And there isn't a place on the planet I have landed yet that the universal language of a smile didn't just break down every barrier that you had put up in front of yourself the moment you landed. That's the antidote, I think, is just meeting those people that are different from you, both in America and elsewhere. But I'm one of those guys. I live in a bubble. I mean, everybody within 10 miles of me speaks, looks, and acts exactly like me. Yeah. And has the same politics and has the same view of the world. And, that's scary.
Because your politics.
I do. I don't need anybody really reinforcing them. I need a few people to come and go, you know what? That may not work for everybody.
That's pretty good. Now, we've talked about some of the other movie projects that you've worked on, and we also talked about traveling around the world. What is maybe one of the highlights that you look back at on your travels as far as a movie was concerned? Was there one that the location or maybe the timing of it really sets apart?
I did quite a few movies in Romania, starting around the time that just shortly after the revolution there, throughout the communist socialist government. And to watch a society build itself up from the wreckage of what it had cast aside was fascinating. The upheavals we have had, at least in my lifetime, don't compare in any way to what it's like to have your whole fabric of society torn apart. And then you have to figure out, like, let's make it up now. Well, what is it we want to be? And in the middle of that, you've got me, this schmuck from America going, I just want to, get a camera crew together and make this movie that I wrote and who's aboard? And trying to separate my needs from theirs, and then realizing that not only are they kind of inseparable, but they actually ended up informing my movie in a way that I thought was really enriching. And so I ended up sort of absorbing that whole cultural anxiety into the film. And it was kind of a horror thriller film. It was one of the Prophecy series, if you've ever heard of those. But it was one of my favorite ones because I didn't try to be like an American making an American movie in a foreign land. I just thought, okay, let's throw that all away and let's become Romanian.
Now, the My Best Worst Adventure, without having the dialogue and all that, having the expressions, how hard was getting the expression that you were looking for?
Sometimes difficult, but usually not, because the two kids, one of them, the boy, was a professional actor from way back. And so I did have a translator so I could give a cue and he would immediately, like, it was in his, wheelhouse. He could do just about anything, drop of hat. I need a tear. I need a smile. I need a this, that. I need, true, inner suffering he could deliver. The girl had never acted a day in her life. And her name's Lily Patra. And she just was skipping school one day because she's a bit of a rebel. And I think she was at the time living with her grandmother and having some conflicts, just like the girl in our story. And she walked into an audition like, what the hell? Let me check it out. Let me see what this is all about. I don't know. And she stood in, and since it's a mute part, she couldn't really audition, right? She couldn't say, I couldn't give her a bunch of lines to say. So she just stood in the front of the camera and she just talked about herself and about her life. And it just came alive. And I realized, okay, the trajectory of this girl's story is the trajectory of my character in the movie. So if I can basically just get her to transplant that character that she already has into this narrative line, I'm going to get something. And I got 5 times more than I expected, because that's what an actress does. They pull out of themselves what they need for the character. And she did it in spades. I mean, she was truly like one of my most proud, and it's arrogant to say she was a discovery, because a lot of people were involved in fashioning her into what she is, but she's a true find. And I would not have had a quarter of the movie that I have if it weren't for her sort of innate talent.
Now, what is it in the audition that sets one apart from another? I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to ask somebody about that audition process. Is it just the it factor with the read? I wish I could give you a definitive answer, because I'm always battling with other people about, it's like music, you like a song, I don't, and vice versa. It is an alchemy, and you it's intuitive and you sort of feel it. One thing I in most of my career, I've sat in a room with actors auditioning in person. And because of distance, especially these films that are being prepped in another country, or because of COVID now, nobody auditions in person. They put themselves on camera, like you and me are talking right now. And you would think that puts a distance on the relationship. You'd think that would be worse. It's better, because when you're in the room, you're influenced by the person. Do you like them or don't you? Right. And you warm them up in the beginning, you're having a little chat, and after they finish, because I don't want to be this jerk. All right, thank you. Next. like, what's up? How you doing? And you're trying to establish a little bit of a rapport. But what that does is it seeps under your skin, and it influences your process. Whereas I'm getting now a picture of you, how you would be in my movie, because the movie sees through the same camera lens that I'm seeing through right now. Right.
And so that's this weird thing. And you see it in superstar actors. When you meet them in person, it's like, really? I had Robert Redford walk into my office years ago, accidentally. I wish he was there to see me. But I barely recognized him. And he was so small, not in stature, but kind of in stature, but in just not being at all somebody I would ever think twice to look at again. It was just, but then he's on screen and of course lights it up. And that's what the camera finds sometimes that we don't. So it's really important to look at people through a lens.
So technology has actually helped in that regards.
And distance, the kind of separation that you get that allows you to sort of assess a person in a way that a movie does. And I find that fascinating. It took me a while to understand it, because I was like, why are these people not good in my movie when they were brilliant in the audition and they're doing the exact same thing? What happened? And it was because what went in the lens was different from what went in my eyes.
Now, has there been any that you saw them walk in and maybe after they were cast, they really, really blew you away and you were like, where was that in the audition?
Yeah. I mean, it happens every which way. You'll have somebody that does a brilliant audition and then you want to bring him back for the boss, the executives or the studio execs or whoever. And like any of us, you panic a little and all that whatever it is, the itness goes away. and then the exec's going like, really? That was your pick? Well, yeah, but really it wasn't that way. Okay, next. So it's all, I'm sure that with all sorts of careers that the world is littered with deserving, excellent people that, but for one quirk of a moment, you're there and they're there. And it's Darwinism, I guess. Some people get eaten and it's not their fault.
There you go. Now, has the work on My Best Worst Adventure, has that maybe inspired you to do more works aside from the horror genre that you've felt so comfortable with?
Yes, absolutely. Although my next film shoots in September is sort of a horror comedy, but so I'm not throwing down the spurs, but my push now is to do like films. They don't have to be like message movies, but movies that have some sort of a heart and soul to them that inspire people coming out instead of just going, man, that guy died in a really cool way. And the truck ran over him and then he blew up. Okay. Don't get me wrong. That can be cool.
Oh yeah.
Right. But this sort of feeds my soul, and I'm getting to the age where I'd rather instead of just feeding my stomach, I'm doing a little bit more.
There you go. Now the My Best Worst Adventure is going to be available on digital coming up September 1st. I'm learning all these new fancy things. In my day, they you went in a theater and then you went to DVD or VHS, and I could just say go to Blockbuster. Now there's so many streaming platforms and pay-per-view. It's like what I can basically recommend is we have a Facebook page, My Best Worst Adventure. Google it and you tell your TV or use your little QWERTY device to find My Best Worst Adventure. And after September 1st, it'll show up. And then later on in the month or early the following, it will be then streaming on most of your regular platforms that if you subscribe to them, then you can just grab it off that. But yeah, it's just, that's what I do now. I don't know how any of this stuff works. I just type in the name of the movie and somehow miraculously it pops up. That's good stuff. Well, Joel, it has truly been a privilege to have the chance to visit with you today, sir. I'm looking forward to seeing the entire film myself, and hopefully as more works come up, we'll catch up again real soon.
I'm really looking forward to hearing this episode because I can't wait to listen to the other dudes you collected for it. Thank you so much, Cameron. Talk soon.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this 129th episode of Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. If you ever have a comment, a question, Anything else you'd like to know, you can hit me up on the contact page at gqwithcam.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, also TikTok, all at GQWithCam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, you can visit our merch store, where we've got hoodies, shirts, tumblers, mugs, stickers, and more. That's gqwithcam.com/shop. And if you have a special guest idea, you can email me, gqwithcam@gmail.com. Thanks again to our good friend Brandon Allen for coming up with our theme music, and thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Smiley's Breezy Vapes at 313 Falcon Road here in Altus. We hope you guys have a great weekend. We're going to let Brandon Allen go ahead and play us out. We'll be back with another episode on Monday.